It started on a Tuesday evening. The sun had barely dipped below the rooftops, casting a soft orange glow over the quiet cul-de-sac. Noah Ellison, a freelance video editor with a passion for privacy and smart tech, was reviewing footage from his recently installed motion-activated cameras. Just days earlier, someone had left a muddy footprint near the gate to his backyard, an area clearly marked with private property and no trespassing signs. He hadn't thought much of it at the time. Maybe a stray dog or a lost delivery guy. But what he saw now turned his stomach. At 7:42 p.m., a man in a suit appeared on screen, walking deliberately up to Noah's black wrought iron side gate. He didn't knock, he didn't call out, he didn't hesitate. The man reached forward, tried the latch, and when it didn't open, stepped back, looked around, and climbed over. Noah hit pause, rewound, watched again. There was something deliberate about the way the man moved, confident, familiar, even. He zoomed in on the footage. The man's face wasn't clear, but the posture, the hairline, the suit clicked. The guy bore an uncanny resemblance to Greg Lamont, the HOA's new compliance officer. Greg, who had once sent Noah a warning for his mailbox being non-conforming by 2 inches. Noah's pulse quickened. What the hell was the HOA doing inside his yard? The footage continued. Once inside, the man didn't approach the door or walk along the path. Instead, he veered off into the grass, moving toward the back corner of the property, where Noah's tool shed stood. At 7:47, the man disappeared behind the shed. He didn't reappear for over 5 minutes. Noah leaned back from the monitor, mind spinning. He opened the live feed. Nothing now but shadows and wind. He immediately downloaded the footage, then went to his front window and peeked outside. Everything looked normal, quiet. The neighbor's sprinklers had just come on. The next morning, Noah emailed the HOA with the footage attached. No response. That afternoon, a letter arrived in his mailbox. It was from the HOA. The subject line, Notice of Infraction, Unapproved Structural Modification. According to the letter, Noah's shed had been illegally extended by 2 feet into regulated boundary space, and he was now in violation of local setback ordinances per HOA Code 1-4C. He had 7 days to comply or face a $150 daily fine. Noah blinked at the page. He hadn't modified anything. The shed hadn't been touched since he bought the place 3 years ago. Unless, he checked the footage again. At exactly 7:48, there was a brief flicker from the second camera positioned near the side fence. A shadow passed in front of the lens. Then, for 3 seconds, the feed glitched. When it came back, the man was leaving the backyard, brushing off his suit. Noah paused. Something had changed. Behind him, the shed door was slightly ajar and it hadn't been before. He double-checked earlier footage. The door was closed tight. Now it had clearly been opened. And that's when it hit him. The letter. The violation. The mysterious visit. The shed hadn't been out of code. Until after someone entered his property and tampered with it. Noah stared at the screen. This wasn't an accident. This was a setup. And he had the whole thing on camera. Noah couldn't sleep that night. He lay in bed, the light from his monitor still faintly glowing through the cracked office door, replaying the same 7-minute stretch of video in his head. He had the footage. He had the times. But if the HOA was bold enough to send someone into his yard, mess with his property, and then issue a violation all without flinching, what else were they capable of? By morning, he'd made up his mind. He needed to fight back, not with fists or rage, but with evidence and exposure. He spent the next few hours drafting a detailed email to the HOA board. Attached were 2 video clips, one showing the man climbing the gate, and another revealing the shed before and after the suspicious modification. He included time codes, freeze frames, and highlighted stills that matched the man's face with Greg Lamont's public HOA profile photo. It was bulletproof. He hit send. 30 minutes later, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Noah Ellison, a flat voice asked. Speaking. This is Barbara Green. I'm the acting president of the HOA. We received your message. Noah waited for a follow-up, maybe an apology, or even a lie, but the silence on the other end grew long and awkward, and he finally asked, I'll just be honest, there's been a misunderstanding. The footage you sent doesn't clearly identify anyone, and the board is within its rights to inspect non-compliant structures by trespassing onto my private property. Noah snapped. We were operating under community enforcement protocols. It's all outlined in Section 9 of the HOA Charter. Section 9 doesn't give you the right to break into someone's yard, Barbara. The line went quiet again. We recommend you resolve your shed violation quickly, she said, tone ice-cold now. Ignoring HOA orders could result in escalated fines, or even a lien against your home. The call ended. Noah stared at the phone in disbelief. Not only were they ignoring the footage, they were doubling down and threatening him. He stood, walked outside, and stared at the shed. The latch had been replaced, subtly different. Brass, instead of the original chrome. He hadn't noticed that before. His hands clenched. He turned on his phone's camera and recorded a video journal, showing the altered latch, the damaged ground around the shed's base, and the exact footage from the night before. Then he uploaded it privately to the cloud in case. That evening, just after dinner, another alert pinged from his surveillance system. Someone was near the back fence. Noah rushed to his office, pulled up the live feed and froze. There were two people this time, both wearing hoodies. One carried a clipboard. The other had what looked like a measuring tape. They were methodical, scanning his property line, whispering to each other. One of them pointed toward the side of his house. Noah captured every second. Then, without warning, one of them looked straight at the camera and smiled. Noah's stomach dropped. It was the same man from before. Greg Lamont. No doubt this time. And he knew he was being watched. The two turned and disappeared into the darkness. Slipping through the back alley, Noah exhaled slowly. This wasn't an investigation anymore. It was a message, and the HOA had just made it personal. Noah barely slept again. The image of Greg Lamont smirking into the camera played over and over in his mind like a looping nightmare. They weren't just trespassing, they were taunting him now. And the clipboard. What were they recording? Why measure his fence line at night? By sunrise, Noah had made a decision. If the HOA wanted to invade his property under the cover of darkness, he'd make sure every inch of it was covered. By noon, he had 3 new cameras installed, 2 floodlights, and a silent perimeter alarm triggered by pressure sensors along the back fence. He even ordered a wildlife cam to catch any blind spots. Paranoia wasn't paranoia if someone was actually watching you. He posted new signs at all entrances. Private property trespassers will be prosecuted. Warning: audio and video surveillance. In use 24/7 later that afternoon, Noah saw the HOA truck parked a few houses down. Greg was inside it, sipping from a paper cup and staring directly at Noah's house. That night, the cameras didn't catch anyone, but the next morning, a bright pink notice was taped to his front door. You are in violation of HOA Regulation 11B, unauthorized security fixtures. They were fining him for the new floodlights and cameras. Noah stood in stunned silence on his porch, the letter crumpled in his hand. He had to laugh because, if he didn't, he might break something. He was protecting his own home from trespassers, and they were fining him for it. He headed straight to his computer and pulled up the HOA charter. Regulation 11B was vague. It warned against unsightly or excessive installations visible from the street. Noah's lights were angled downward and barely noticeable in daylight. His cameras were smaller than a light bulb. Still, the fine was real. He posted a public question to the community Facebook group. Can anyone tell me how many cameras the HOA is allowed to install around our homes? The responses trickled in. A few neighbors messaged him privately. One mentioned being cited after she installed security lights after her car was broken into. Another said he paid to move a shed back 3 inches, but later found it hadn't violated any codes to begin with. Then a private message popped up. You're not crazy. They did it to me too. I have something you need to see. The sender was a man named Tyler Crenshaw. He lived 2 streets over. Noah didn't know him well, just a wave in passing, maybe once or twice. But the message intrigued him. Tyler invited him over that evening. When Noah arrived, Tyler met him at the door with a cautious glance over his shoulder. His blinds were drawn. His porch light flickered ominously. Inside, Tyler pulled out a folder. It was thick, full of printed emails, old violation letters, screenshots, and annotated maps. They tried to rezone my backyard, Tyler said, claimed it overlapped with HOA-managed green space. Fined me, threatened me. I fought it and won. But only because I had a cousin on the city zoning committee. He handed Noah a single sheet of paper. It was a newsletter dated over a year ago. One section was titled, Proposed Easement Reassessment and Neighborhood Beautification Initiative. Tyler tapped the fine print. This lets them encroach on private lots for landscaping and curb appeal projects. If you're near the green belt or drainage lines, they try to justify expansion. Yours backs up to that dry creek bed, right? Noah's eyes narrowed. His yard was near the drainage slope the HOA had recently been discussing during meetings. This wasn't about violations, it wasn't about rules, it was about land, and Noah had just become their next target. By the next morning, Noah's head was pounding from the weight of it all. The trespassing, the fake violations, the smiling man behind the clipboard. Now this so-called beautification initiative, buried in a year-old newsletter initiative designed to let the HOA quietly push into private property. One backyard at a time. He paced his office, pulling up every archived email, HOA notice, and newsletter he'd saved since moving in. Most of it was digital junk. But one particular file stood out, an early PDF titled Community Enhancement Vendor Partners Finalized List. Noah hadn't looked at it before. He clicked it open. Rows of contractor names and services filled the page. Landscaping, tree removal, surveyors, pest control. One name caught his attention. Brightfield Surveying and Design. It looked familiar. And not because they'd ever visited his property. He ran the name through a public database. The business was registered locally, with one interesting detail. The billing address wasn't a business plaza or industrial park. It was a house. A house on the very same street as Carol Vickers, the treasurer of the HOA. Noah blinked. A second search confirmed it. Brightfield Surveying was registered to her nephew, the same man who had stood behind Greg Lamont during that late-night measuring session. He felt a cold chill creep down his spine. This wasn't a coincidence. The HOA had been quietly hiring relatives and friends through shell vendors, and now they were showing up, under cover of HOA authority, to scope out homeowners' properties for violations that could justify pushing them out, or seizing a portion of land under enhancement clauses. Noah backed everything up, printing copies, encrypting files, and uploading the camera footage again to multiple cloud drives. He wasn't taking any chances. At noon, someone knocked at the door. It was an older man, stooped, wearing a faded baseball cap and aviator sunglasses. "You're Ellison, right?" the man asked. "I am." The man handed him a small, dusty flash drive. "This used to be my house. Before I got priced out, they did it to me too." Noah looked down at the drive in his palm. "What's on this?" "Evidence," the man replied. "They won't know I gave it to you if you keep quiet, but watch your cameras tonight." Then the man turned and walked away. Back inside, Noah locked the door and plugged the drive into an old laptop, offline and firewalled. The folder was labeled HOA_Intel. Inside were dozens of PDFs, images, and audio recordings, some of them secret meetings, others annotated photos with property lines, including Noah's. Several properties were marked with colored flags: high priority easement, open, board friendly, resistant. Noah's name had a flag next to it. Resistant. Leverage through code enforcement, review fence line and shed. He sat in stunned silence. They had an internal hit list, a strategy. His home was part of a quiet takeover effort, masked as neighborhood improvement. And worst of all, his fence, his shed, his home, they were the blueprint. He quickly copied the drive's contents, stored backups again, and made a decision. This wasn't going to be solved with more emails or warning signs. Noah was going to blow the whole operation wide open. But he didn't realize just yet someone was already inside his system. Noah barely breathed as he stared at the screen. His name, his property, labeled, targeted. The flash drive's contents didn't just suggest corruption, they confirmed it. And now he understood why the violations were so sudden, why the cameras had become a threat, and why the HOA was so eager to shut him down. They didn't want to enforce order. They wanted control. And he was standing in their way. That night, Noah sat in the dark with only the glow of his monitors lighting the room. His camera feeds were stable, motion sensors silent. The floodlights hadn't triggered, but still, something didn't feel right. He scanned through each camera, one by one. Then paused. His driveway camera was offline. He leaned closer. The feed wasn't frozen, it was simply missing. The file was gone. That folder, which had been full of clips just hours ago, was now empty. He checked the others, one by one. The footage files from earlier that week were disappearing, vanishing from his local hard drive in real time. Noah yanked the Ethernet cable out of his desktop. Too late. A small blinking cursor appeared on his screen. "Nice lights. Let's hope they're surge protected." Noah's heart slammed into his ribs. He reached under his desk and powered the computer off manually. He ran a diagnostic on his backup laptop. It was clean, isolated, but the message was clear: his main system had been compromised. Someone had breached his network, and it wasn't some random hacker. It was someone nearby, someone who knew exactly what he was monitoring, where he was saving it and what to delete first. He stepped outside and walked the perimeter with a flashlight, checking the hardware manually. 2 of the exterior cameras had been turned pointing into the sky. Someone had physically moved them. The final insult: his mailbox. The hinge had been broken. Inside, a rolled-up printout of his own security screenshot had been shoved in Greg Lamont's smirking face, looking back at him, as if to say, "I see you too." By morning, Noah was done playing defense. He contacted a civil attorney. After reviewing the footage, the evidence on the flash drive, and the recorded trespassing, the lawyer leaned forward, steepled his fingers, and said, "This is bigger than code violations. If we play this right, we're talking invasion of privacy, property tampering, even fraud." Noah nodded. "I don't want a quiet settlement. I want this exposed." The lawyer smiled. "Then we'll need to make it loud." Together, they assembled a media packet. Clean, edited footage, side-by-side screenshots, HOA charter documents, proof of fake vendors, a full timeline of the trespassing, violation threats, and the smear tactics used to silence resistance. The plan was simple: go public. But before Noah could send it out, another letter arrived, this time hand-delivered and unsigned. No HOA letterhead. No envelope. Just one sentence. "Take down your cameras and delete the footage, or the shed won't be the only thing that gets inspected." Noah looked out his window. Across the street, parked crooked in front of a fire hydrant, was the HOA compliance truck. Inside sat Greg Lamont. Smiling, Noah walked into the HOA meeting like a man stepping onto a battlefield. It was held in the community clubhouse, an overly sterile room with too many chairs and not enough light. The place was packed. Neighbors lined the walls, murmuring quietly, holding flimsy paper agendas and cups of weak coffee. The board members sat at a long folding table in front, smug and composed like royalty holding court. Greg Lamont sat at the far end, arms crossed, his smug grin wider than ever. Noah didn't wait for the meeting to start. He stepped up to the center aisle, dropped a thick binder onto the table with a satisfying thud, and said loud enough for everyone to hear, "Before you start citing my yard for made-up violations, maybe explain why your compliance officer broke into my property, tampered with my shed." The room fell silent. Barbara Green, the acting HOA president, adjusted her glasses slowly. "Mr. Ellison, you've already filed numerous complaints. This isn't the forum." "It is exactly the forum," Noah snapped. "Because every time I've gone through proper channels, I've been stonewalled, fined, or threatened. So now, I'm going to do what none of you seem to want: show everyone the truth." He pulled out a small remote, clicked a button, and the projector screen behind the board came to life. The first video played. It was clear. High-resolution footage of Greg Lamont climbing over Noah's gate. The room gasped. Noah flipped to another clip, this one showing 2 men sneaking into his yard at night, one of them carrying a tape measure. The footage paused just as Greg looked up at the camera and smiled. "That's your compliance officer," Noah said, "caught trespassing. Twice. After hours. With no warrant, no notice, and no authority." Greg's smile finally faltered. Barbara straightened her papers, clearly flustered. This footage could be fabricated. Anyone can. It's timestamped, synced to my perimeter alarms, and backed up 6 ways from Sunday." Noah interrupted. "And if you want to question its validity, we can let the local news and my lawyer make that decision." He flipped the projector again. Now the screen showed documents from the flash drive, vendor lists, property blueprints marked with coded flags, HOA emails outlining plans to reclaim boundary space under the guise of BEAUTIFICATION. Then, he revealed the Kikara scanned page, showing the vendor license for Brightfield Surveying and Design, with a residential address, one that matched the home of Carol Vickers, the HOA treasurer. A stunned silence followed. Even board members began whispering to one another. "I want every fine revoked," Noah said, his voice calm now, controlled. "I want a formal apology, and I want a community-wide audit of every code enforcement action taken in the last 12 months. Barbara looked like she was trying not to explode. "We can't simply." "Yes, you can," came a voice from the crowd. It was Tyler Crenshaw. Second, the motion. In fact, I propose we call a vote of no confidence right now. More voices joined in. One by one, neighbors began standing up, shouting their agreement. Some waving their own letters and photos of victims. They, too, had been harassed, targeted, fined for fabricated nonsense. The room transformed from a meeting into a mutiny. Barbara banged a gavel, but no one listened. Then Greg stood, grabbed his briefcase, and walked out shoulders stiff, the smirk wiped clean off his face as the crowd pressed forward, demanding answers. Noah took a breath, feeling the shift. He had finally broken their wall of silence, but just as he packed up to leave, a text buzzed on his phone, unknown number. You think the board was the top? You're not even close. The meeting ended in chaos, but by the next morning, things were strangely quiet. Greg Lamont had vanished from the neighborhood, his HOA truck gone, his house lights off. Carol Vickers' name was removed from the HOA directory. And Barbara being bombarded by emails, door knocks, and at least one angry neighbor with a bullhorn resigned for health reasons. Noah should have felt victorious, but that text kept playing in his mind. You think the board was the top? You're not even close. He didn't recognize the number. There was no follow-up. He'd tried calling it back. It went to a dead line. That's when the knock came. It was nearly midnight. Noah approached the front door cautiously, a flashlight in one hand, pepper spray in the other. When he opened it, he was surprised to see a woman mid-30s, trench coat, glasses, hood up despite the warm night air. I'm not here to scare you, she said quickly, but I need to talk. And I need you to promise no cameras. Just ears. Noah hesitated, then nodded. They sat in the living room, Noah still on edge. The woman introduced herself as Lena Rourke, former HOA secretary, fired quietly 6 months earlier. They told everyone I stepped down, she said, but I was forced out. I started asking too many questions. Lena pulled a folder from inside her coat and handed it over. Inside were copies of internal memos back over 2 years. Notes from private meetings labeled external strategy group, budget allocations that didn't match official statements, and underlined in red dozens of references to Briar Corp. What's Briar Corp? Noah asked. She exhaled. A shell company. It's how the board funneled money to contractors, surveyors, developers, even private investigators. The plan was to push out homeowners who didn't align with their long-term vision for the community. Noah's eyes narrowed. What vision? Privatized property redevelopment. They were planning to sell controlling interest in parts of the neighborhood to an investment group, one that would convert it into a semi-gated executive district. The HOA was just the front. Noah flipped the pages. One of them showed an annotated map of the neighborhood, his block outlined in bold. Phase 1. They targeted homes on the perimeter first, Lena continued. The ones with extra yard space, backing up to common land or unused areas. Yours is one of the last lots they couldn't push through. Noah's mind raced. Greg, Carol, Barbara, they were all in on it. Not just them. There's someone else. She leaned in, whispering. Raymond Nash. He's the developer, funding Briar Corp. He doesn't sit on the board, he's above it. He lives 2 towns over, but he's been quietly buying up homes here under LLCs. Noah gritted his teeth. And now I've got a target on my back. Lena nodded. You were never just an annoyance. You're the blockade, the thing stopping them from finalizing the land deal. Suddenly, headlights swept across the windows. Lena stiffened. That's my cue. I shouldn't have stayed this long. She stood, handing him a burner phone. Use this if you need to. Reach me. Don't call from your own number. They're watching your cell tower activity. Then she was gone, disappearing into the night. Noah stood frozen, folder in hand, staring at the map. They weren't just trespassing. They weren't just lying. They were trying to erase him, and now he had proof that could burn the whole empire down. But as he turned off the lights, something flashed outside, red and blinking. A drone, hovering just beyond the fence line, watching. Noah didn't sleep, not even a minute. The drone hovered for 6 minutes before zipping off into the night, its red light disappearing like an ember in the sky. He stood at his window for a long time after that, holding Lena's folder, the burner phone, and a plan, forming in the back of his mind one that didn't just reveal the truth, but made sure it couldn't be buried again. By noon the next day, flyers were taped to mailboxes across the neighborhood, hand-delivered invites, no HOA approval needed. Community BBQ and open forum, Ellison residence. Saturday, Bring your appetite, and your questions. He rented a giant white tent, hired a food truck, and borrowed a projector and speakers from a local rec center. Then, he made a few calls to local journalists, a county inspector, and one zoning official who'd been on Noah's side before. By Saturday, his backyard was filled with neighbors, folding chairs, laughter, the smell of grilled ribs in the air. Kids darted between sprinklers. But the atmosphere changed the moment Noah tapped the microphone. "Thanks for coming," he said. "I'm not here to talk about potato salad." Chuckles, nervous ones. He clicked the remote. The projector screen behind him came to life, revealing a cleanly edited 12-minute video compilation. Surveillance clips of Greg trespassing, the shed being tampered with, the secret vendor lists, the fake company addresses, then overlays of the HOA's shady easement plans and Lena's annotated map of targeted properties. Gasps broke out. Murmurs turned to shouts. But Noah wasn't finished. "I'm not the only one," he said, looking around the crowd. "If you've ever been fined for a violation that didn't make sense, if you ever felt like you were being pressured to sell, you weren't imagining it." He held up a thick packet. "These are formal charges being submitted to the county: attorney fraud, trespassing, illegal surveillance, and violation of private property laws. I've got a lawyer. I've got evidence. And if any of you want to join in, there's strength in numbers." A cheer erupted, but one person wasn't clapping at the edge of the crowd. A tall man in a blazer stood with arms crossed, watching intently. Noah's eyes locked on him. He recognized the face from Lena's file. Raymond Nash. The man turned and walked off casually, disappearing down the alley behind the houses. The crowd began to buzz with questions, anger, support. Noah shook hands, passed out copies of documents, and exchanged numbers with other neighbors who were finally ready to fight back. By sunset, the yard was almost clear. Only Tyler Crenshaw remained, helping Noah fold chairs. "You lit the fuse," Tyler said. "You sure you're ready for the blast?" "I don't care if it burns down the whole HOA," Noah replied. "Let it." Just then, his phone vibrated. A new message from the burner Lena had given him. "They're moving faster now. Nash knows." Attached was a blurry photo. A black SUV parked across from Noah's house. Same one from the night the cameras glitched. He looked up and, sure enough, it was there again. He didn't flinch. Instead, he walked to his driveway and stared directly at the tinted glass. Then, slowly, he raised his phone and snapped a photo. The SUV pulled away. But the war wasn't over. Later that night, as Noah checked his mailbox, he found a plain white envelope. Inside was a single photograph. It was an aerial shot of him, standing at the BBQ with his microphone. Taken from directly above, Noah stared at the image, his jaw tightening. They were still watching, but now so was he. The end.